This early morning, let's reveal the dark secrets of blessed objects with duality and love meditation. The quest to receive a blessed object is the quest to further entrench ourselves in duality. The duality referred to here is not something vague and unknowable. It's not something pseudo-intellectual, like saying sweet and sour or hot and cold. It's the fundamental duality the Buddha taught in the Four Noble Truths, the foundational, the cornerstone of Buddhism. The duality referred to here is simply pushing and pulling. The midpoint between those two extremes is about living in acceptance. Now, many people get scared, and they equate that with being completely passive. It is not. When one has mastered the path of, when one is successfully practicing mindfulness and meditation, one has learned how to be at peace with external circumstances as well as with our internal reactions to them. As a fringe benefit, we escape the two extremes of being either A, completely scattered, or B, completely contrived. What is that middle point between those two extremes? Centered spontaneity. When our choices and our utterances and deeds are like boats floating upon the river of centered spontaneity, then when we act and communicate and make choices from centered spontaneity, we are free of duality and find ourselves able to effortlessly do great good and effortlessly navigate very complex situations. This all begins with the initial step away from duality. It's understandable that we want things to change. We evolved the fundamental capacity to ensure that we live long enough to reproduce. That means we are wired to have an aversion to anything that undermines our ability for food, shelter, clothing, water, and the opportunity to procreate. And that we would reach for anything that supports that. That's wired into us. So we mustn't be foolish. We mustn't tell ourselves stories that if we were truly spiritual, we wouldn't desire those things. No, we are hardwired for those impulses. And the quest of the Buddha's path is not to burn out our perception of those drives, but to learn how to notice those drives and make peace with those drives in the most wonderful way. But assuming we want safety and hate peril, and we want help, which is totally understandable, we must understand that the greatest help comes not from magic, not from ritual, but from love. The same Buddhist literature that condemns ritual in the Dhammapada lauds the blessings that come from love in the numerical discourses of the Buddha. Now, not all love is created equal. Just as not all go to the gym, and you'll see that not all bodybuilders are created equal. Some have huge frames, some have small frames. Some have long tendons, some have short tendons. Some are built like a mountain, some are built like a reed. Similarly, there are different flavors of love. The love that is most spiritually powerful, the highest love, arises spontaneously. It is completely uncontrived. That love comes as a byproduct of our centered spontaneity that is generated by the skillful practice of mindfulness and meditation. And this is the essence of how to practice that. This is the this is the mirror behind the trapdoor that is the secret of all magic, metaphorically speaking. Every time we breathe in, we automatically access our sympathetic nervous system, which has not evolved for active concentration, but instead the opposite. It has evolved for a special type of perception, a type of perception that is vulnerable, passive, visceral, and random. We get to perceive the pleasurable and the painful, the interesting and the boring, the external and the internal, the physical and the mental, the glorious and the grotesque. And what do we do with those perceptions? I'll give you a hint. Every time we exhale, we automatically access our parasympathetic nervous system, which has evolved for both physical relaxation and as well as mental release. We call that meditation. So we are already wired by natural selection to practice effortless mindfulness with each inhalation and effortless meditation with each exhalation. Well, you might intelligently ask, if that's the case, why bother sitting in an impeccable posture for the better part of an hour? Because due to the caprice of evolution, this 3-pound squishy supercomputer between our ears in its complexity is somewhat divorced from itself. And by deliberately meditating, we are aligning our intention with the fundamental metaphoric factory installed wiring. So I look forward to meditating with you in less than 90 seconds from now. So, but first, a bit of housekeeping. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. Welcome to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. If you love Star Wars and you wish to meditate as profoundly or as transformatively as General Leia Organa on Ajahn Kloss under the guidance of Luke Skywalker, be sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell. And now a bit of good news. If at any point during this early morning live stream you have a specific question about Buddhist meditation, Buddhist philosophy, or how to apply them to your life, simply type your question in great detail in the chat window. And if you're on a laptop, that chat window will be on the right-hand side of the screen. And if you're watching on your smartphone, it'll be on the bottom part of your screen. I guess I could have done that with pointing. Right side, bottom. I'll try to remember that in the future. And now, let's turn to our primary practice. Just as every race begins with a starter pistol and ends with a finish line, I found it useful to begin every meditation with a brief chant that exercises our empathy and enthusiasm, and to conclude it in a similar manner. So please chant with me. May I liberate all beings by relying on the 3 jewels. May I liberate all beings by relying on the 3 jewels. There's nothing mystical here. The 3 jewels are simply the example of the archetype, the teachings of attributed to the Buddha and students of the Buddha. Very simple. May I liberate all beings by relying on the 3 jewels. And now we come to my adaptation and amplification of the Buddha's most fundamental meditation manual. It contains 16 exercises that divide evenly into 4 sets. The promise of this text, and if you want, I will add it to the download page. The promise of this text is simple. Master this technique, and you will accomplish true knowledge and liberation, which is another way of saying enlightenment. This is one-stop shopping. This is very simple. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha promised that full enlightenment could be accomplished by people who practice this technique for less than 7 years, or 7 quarters, or 7 months, or 7 fortnights, or 7 weeks, or even 7 days. If you start off, and this has 16 exercises, and if you give yourself permission to practice along with me incrementally, perhaps the first week, 32 rounds of the first meditation, perhaps the second week, 32 rounds of the second meditation, and 32 rounds of the first meditation, so forth and so on. Within 17 weeks, you will be good to go and ready for your first 7-day retreat, which you can do from the comfort of your home. We begin with Kaya Sati's only set of 4 preliminary meditations that center our bodies. We begin with the first of centering's 4 physical preliminary practices, where we mindfully notice and even investigate our relaxingly longer exhalations. Allow me to bring to your attention the word mindfully. This is the first of 7 enlightenment factors, which means there are people who would tell you that if you're truly spiritual, you won't even notice unpleasant things in your life. Malarkey. The most foundational enlightenment factor is a vulnerability to the present moment, whether that present moment is pleasurable, painful, interesting, or boring. So we're going to play with 2 rhetorical questions. The questions are just 2 words long. How long? We do not play with these words in order to manipulate the duration or depths of our breath. All we do is simple. By silently and mentally reciting these 2 words in harmony with our inhalation and our exhalation and our relaxation, we take our first steps upon the path of liberation. Or to paraphrase Obi-Wan Kenobi, aboard the Millennium Falcon, we take our first steps into a much larger world. Please practice with me. The Buddha, a tale is attributed to the Buddha of a warrior felled by an arrow. A surgeon runs to his side, and before the surgeon can remove the arrow, the warrior says, "You must not remove the arrow until I know the name, caste, and motivation of the person who released it." To which the physician replied, "You'll be dead before you ever get that information." Similarly, there are many questions we can ask, sometimes from curiosity, sometimes from self-importance, sometimes in an effort to establish petty one-upsmanship. We don't need to know everything about everything to practice these simple exercises. No PhD is required. We come to the second of Centering's 4 physical preliminary practices, where we mindfully notice and even investigate the coalescence of our invigoratingly sharper inhalations. Invigoration, or energy, is the third of 7 enlightenment factors. We're going to play with the same exercise as we did previously, replacing the adjective long with the adjective short. And once again, our job is not to influence the superficiality or speed of our breathing. All we're doing is silently and mentally reciting these words in harmony with our inhalation and our exhalation and our relaxation. I must warn you that I only check for questions about once every 8 minutes. So if you type in a question, be patient. We come to the third of Centering's 4 physical preliminary practice, where we allow our minds to mindfully notice and even investigate our bodies. So investigate here, the second of 7 enlightenment factors, is the opposite of defensiveness. It's a synonym for curiosity. You'll notice that in addition to the painting of the meditating Jedi in the center of the screen, it is on either side of it, there is an artistic variation on a theme of tantric sex. Whenever these two images appear, flanked, that's where I was looking for. Whenever these two images appear, in addition to the Jedi image in this text, it infers that the exercise featured is suitable for practice while in the midst of tantric sex. So we come to our first verb, the sensory verb feel, which we silently and mentally recite as we breathe in. And as we exhale, we silently and mentally recite the noun form, which functions as a synonym of body. So once again, let's play with this. We don't actively force ourselves to notice. If all we do is silently and mentally play with these words, in harmony with our inhalation, exhalation, and relaxation, we cannot help but make progress on the path of liberation. Whether you are completely bored or you're in abject turmoil, these 16 exercises are suitable. I would remind you that we do not have to force ourselves to feel. Due to the caprice of natural selection, every time we breathe in, we are already wired to notice, vulnerably, passively, viscerally, and randomly, thanks to our sympathetic nervous system. Now we come to the fourth of centerings for physical preliminary practices where we allow our bodies to tranquilly relax. This tranquility is the fifth of 7 enlightenment factors. Again, as we breathe in, we silently and mentally recite the noun form. This time as we exhale, we silently and mentally recite the verb feel. This is not an affirmation. We're not lying to ourselves and pretending that we are more calm than we really are. We are simply delivering a verb, handing a verb over to our volition, our capacity to will. That influences our mind, which influences our energy, which influences our body. And remember, every time we exhale, we automatically access our parasympathetic nervous system, which is already wired for not only mental release, but physical relaxation. Therefore, we don't have to force anything. We simply allow it. We continue with Vedana Sati's set of 4 jhana meditations that center our feelings. We begin with the first of 4 feeling-oriented centering practices where we savor the first jhana's invigorating, blissful joy. Remember that joy is the 4th enlightenment factor. This flows from gently grinning with the corners of our mouth, the apples of our cheek, and the crow's feet of our eyes. This is not some vulgar, crusty, the clown rictus. But think subtle. Think Mona Lisa. Think nuance. And the smile is aimed towards our bodies. Flesh, blood, and bone. As we breathe in, we silently and mentally recite the verb grin, and as we exhale, we silently and mentally recite the noun form. Now, this is invigorating. Some people consider this to be like contemplative espresso. We continue with the second of 4 feeling-oriented centering practices where we savor the second jhana's peaceful joy that flows from gently grinning with the corners of our mouth, the apples of our cheeks, and the crow's feet of our eyes towards our thoughts, emoting, intending, reasoning, recalling, and imagining. And clearly, we're using the noun thoughts as an umbrella term. Again, as we breathe in, we silently and mentally recite the verb grin. This time as we exhale, we silently and mentally recite the umbrella term, thoughts. We continue with the third of 4 feeling-oriented centering practices where we savor the third jhana's contentment by mindfully noticing, investigating, and coalescing our thoughts, emoting, intending, reasoning, recalling, and imagining. You'll notice the highlighted bit right here, where we practice the 6th enlightenment factor's coalescence. This occurs every time that we inhale. It does not have to be forced, but it can be useful to explore the effect of inhalation upon the process. Remembering, so as we breathe in, we return to the verb feel, and as we exhale, we continue working with the umbrella term, thoughts. Remember, perceiving as we breathe in is an automatic function of our sympathetic nervous system. We continue with the fourth, four feeling-oriented centering practices where we savor the fourth jhana's neutrality by allowing our thoughts, emoting, intending, reasoning, recalling, and imagining to tranquilly relax. Remember, calming is a natural function of the parasympathetic nervous system that we automatically access during each exhalation. Remember, calm is a verb in this context, not an adjective. We continue with Chitta Sati's second set of the four jhana meditations that center the mind. We begin with the first of four mind-oriented centering practices where we savor the fifth jhana sphere of infinite spaciousness by mindfully noticing, investigating, and coalescing our mind's ability to see, hear, feel, taste, smell, and the like. And so just like before, we're using another umbrella term. So we breathe in, we effortlessly access the perception, this perceptual acuity afforded to us by our sympathetic nervous system. And as we exhale, we silently and mentally recite the noun mind. We continue with the second of 4 mind-oriented centering practices where we savor the 6th sphere of infinite awareness, which is metaphoric, which we generate by allowing our mind to invigoratingly gladden us towards it. We gently smile from the corners of our mouth, the apples of our cheeks, and the crow's feet of our eyes. As we breathe in, we silently and mentally recite the verb grin. And as we exhale, we silently and mentally recite the umbrella term mind. We come to the third of 4 mind-oriented centering practices where we savor the 7th sphere of non-graspability. As we allow our minds seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, and smelling, and the like, to tranquilly relax in the most sustainable way. Remember, we don't force it, we allow it due to the automatic labor of our parasympathetic nervous system. Now we come to the fourth, four mind-oriented centering practices where we savor the eighth jhana sphere of acquiescent non-labeling. By, for instance, simply contenting ourselves to call emotions emotions, intentions intentions, regardless of what they are, thoughts as thoughts, memories as memories, imaginings as imaginings, without getting bogged down in the details. We experience this liberating equanimity, which is the seventh enlightenment factor of our controlling tendencies to push and pull. As we breathe in, once again, we silently and mentally recite the noun mind, the umbrella term mind. This time as we exhale, we silently and mentally recite the verb free, which, remember, as we've discussed previously, every time we exhale, we automatically access that parasympathetic nervous system, which is already wired for both physical relaxation as well as mental release. We conclude with Dhammasati, also known as the Nika Vipassana, set of four impermanence contemplations to help us to circumstantially let it go. Contemplation refers to Vipassana. Circumstance refers to Dhamma. Anika refers to impermanence. We begin with the first of four contemplations where we invigoratingly consider course and permanence. As we play with the first of four rhetorical questions, or perhaps we should say the third of six rhetorical questions. Where change? Whoops. We come to the second of four contemplations where we consider subtle impermanence with a rhetorical question where? Fade. Whoops. We come to the third of four contemplations where we consider very subtle impermanence with the words where? Cease. We conclude with the fourth of four contemplations where we consider relinquishing, surrendering, and letting go, with the words where? Yield. Let us seal this morning's practice with a bit of chanting. May all beings practice of kind communication, conduct, and calmness flow spontaneous and uncontrived. May everyone be free from misery, may everyone be happy. May no one be separated from the happiness. May everyone have balance from the tyranny of hating, craving, and clinging freed. If you feel that I have earned it, you could type something in the chat window. You could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could share it with a friend. You could even help support this channel on Patreon. In approximately 2 3/4 hours, I would very much like to return to lead today's mid-morning lesson and meditation. Until then, may you and yours be happy and healthy. And if you are as geeky as me, this is the way.